Jihoon hit the ground hard. Again. The training mat did nothing to soften the fall, and his body ached from the previous dozen impacts. Above him, his opponent stood tall and confident. The creature had 4 arms and scaled skin that shimmered under the training hall lights. It looked down at Jihoon with something that might have been pity. Time called. "Winner Thrace of Korthan Prime," Instructor Velthar announced. His voice carried no emotion, but everyone in Combat Class 7 Beta knew what he was thinking. Another loss for the human. Another embarrassment. Jihoon pulled himself up slowly. His classmates watched from the observation area. Some looked away. Others whispered to each other. A few laughed quietly. He had learned to ignore the sounds, but they still hurt somewhere deep inside. "Pathetic display," Velthar said as Jihoon walked past. The instructor was a Draxon, tall and reptilian with cold yellow eyes. 47 consecutive losses, human. "Perhaps you should consider a different career path," Jihoon said nothing. He never did after losses. Words would not change anything. He grabbed his training gear and headed toward the locker room. "Hey, Jihoon, wait up." The voice belonged to Doyen, one of the few humans who still treated him like a friend. Doyen jogged over, concern written across his face. "You okay? That was a rough fall." "I am fine," Jihoon replied. His body disagreed, but he had learned to separate what he felt from what he said. "Listen, me and some others are grabbing food at the commissary. You want to come?" Jihoon shook his head. "I have studying to do," Doyen sighed. "You always have studying to do. When do you rest?" "When I understand," Jihoon said simply. Before Doyen could respond, another voice cut through the training hall. "Move aside, losers." Mireille strode past them, her training uniform spotless despite having just finished her own match. She had won, of course. She always won. Mireille was human like Jihoon and Doyen, but that was where the similarities ended. She was fast, strong, and brilliant in combat. The Academy called her the best human fighter in 20 years. She glanced at Jihoon as she passed, and her expression held disappointment. 47 losses, she said. "You make all humans look weak." "Mireille, come on," Doyen protested. "That's not fair." She ignored him, her eyes fixed on Jihoon. "We are the only 3 humans in this class. When you fail, people think we are all failures. Try harder or quit." Then she was gone, leaving Jihoon standing in silence. Doyen put a hand on his shoulder. "Do not listen to her. She does not understand. She is right," Jihoon said quietly. "I do make us look weak." "That is not what I meant. I need to study now," Jihoon interrupted gently. "Thank you, Doyen." He left before his friend could argue further. The Academy library was quiet at this hour. Most students were eating or relaxing after training. Jihoon preferred it this way. He made his way to the back section, where the oldest records were kept. Digital files were useful, but he had learned that the really important information lived in physical books and data crystals that few people bothered to check anymore. Tonight, he pulled up files on the Vryn. The Vryn were the reason the Galactic Academy existed. 5 years ago, they had appeared from the outer rim of known space. They attacked without warning, without communication. Entire battle fleets vanished. Planets went dark. The Vryn took no prisoners and left no survivors who could describe them clearly. What everyone knew was this: the Vryn were apex predators. They had never lost a battle. They moved like shadows and struck like thunder. Every species in the galaxy feared them. Jihoon had been studying them for months. While his classmates practiced combat moves, he read reports. While they built muscle, he built knowledge. He knew it made him weaker in the training hall, but something in his mind told him that understanding the enemy mattered more than matching them in strength. The files showed scattered information. Blurry images, confused sensor readings, reports from the few who survived Vryn attacks long enough to send warnings. Jihoon absorbed it all. One detail caught his attention tonight. A report from a colony ship that encountered a Vryn scout vessel. The Vryn had boarded the ship but did not kill everyone immediately. Instead, they walked through the corridors looking at the crew, studying them. Then they left. The entire ship just left. The report mentioned that the Vryn had spent the most time observing the engineering crew. Not the soldiers, not the fighters. The engineers. Jihoon made a note in his personal log. Why would apex predators care about engineers? Hours passed. His body screamed for rest, but his mind pushed forward. There had to be a pattern. There had to be something everyone else was missing. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The Academy's alert system. Ji-hoon looked up at the nearest display screen. All students return to quarters immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, return to quarters immediately. The voice was calm but firm. Ji-hoon had never heard this type of alert before. He gathered his materials and started toward the door. Other students appeared in the corridors, all moving toward their assigned areas. Confused voices filled the air. What is happening? Is this a test? Did someone breach the perimeter? Ji-hoon moved with the crowd, but his mind was already working. The timing felt wrong for a drill. The Academy usually scheduled those during peak hours, when everyone could participate. Late-night alerts meant something real. He reached his quarters and checked the news feeds. Nothing. No official announcements. Just the alert repeating on all channels. Then his personal communicator buzzed. A message from Doyen. Did you see the sky? Ji-hoon went to his window. The Academy station orbited a small moon, and through the reinforced glass he could see the stars clearly. Except now something blocked the stars. A shape. Dark and massive, moving slowly across his field of vision. A ship. Larger than anything he had ever seen. His communicator buzzed again. This time the message came through on the emergency channel, visible to all students. Attention all personnel. We have made contact with an unknown vessel. All combat students report to Safe Zone Alpha. All other students remain in quarters. Stay calm, follow all instructions. Ji-hoon felt his heart pound. Unknown vessel could mean many things, but something in his gut told him exactly what it meant. The Vrin had found them. He looked out the window again. The massive shape continued its slow approach. It did not move like other ships. It glided smooth and purposeful like a predator stalking prey. Around him he could hear other students panicking. Doors opened and slammed. Voices shouted questions that no one could answer. Ji-hoon stood still, watching the ship. His mind raced through everything he had learned. Every report. Every detail. This was it. First contact with the apex species. And deep down, in a place he did not fully understand, Ji-hoon felt something strange. Not fear, curiosity. He grabbed his datapad with all his research notes and headed for the door. The alert said to stay in quarters, but Ji-hoon had learned to trust his instincts. If the Vrin were really here, he needed to be somewhere he could learn. Somewhere he could observe. The library. The restricted section. The place where the oldest, most classified information about the Vrin was kept. As chaos erupted around the Academy station, Ji-hoon moved quietly through the corridors, heading toward the one place he believed might hold answers. Above, the Vrin ship continued its approach, silent and inevitable as death itself. The corridors were emptying fast. Students rushed toward the designated safe zones. Following years of emergency training, Ji-hoon moved against the crowd, keeping close to the walls. Nobody paid attention to him. In a crisis, the weakest student became invisible. He reached the library entrance and slipped inside. The lights had dimmed to emergency mode, casting everything in red shadows. The main floor was deserted. Ji-hoon moved quickly toward the back, where a security door blocked access to the restricted archives. His fingers moved across the keypad. He had memorized the override code weeks ago while studying late one night. The Academy's security assumed no student would bother breaking into a library. They were wrong. The door clicked open. Inside, the restricted section was cold and quiet. Physical books lined the walls alongside data storage units that hummed softly. Ji-hoon found the terminal he needed and activated it. His clearance should not work here, but he had learned to exploit a flaw in the system's authentication protocol. The screen flickered to life. Classified files on the Vrin filled the display. Outside, alarms began to wail. The Academy's defense systems were activating. Through the thick walls, Ji-hoon could hear the distant thunder of weapons powering up. The station was preparing for battle. He worked faster, pulling up every file he could access. Video footage from encounters, tactical analyses, biological studies based on limited evidence. All of it painted the same picture. The Vrin were unstoppable. But Ji-hoon noticed something others had missed. In every encounter, the Vrin never attacked first. They appeared, they waited, and only when provoked did they strike. It was a small detail buried in the reports. Most analysts dismissed it as irrelevant. Ji-hoon did not. Suddenly the building shook. Not violently, but enough to rattle the shelves. The lights flickered. Jihoon's hands paused over the keyboard. That was not weapons fire. That was something breaching the hull. They were already inside. He should run. Every instinct screamed at him to find a safe zone. But his curiosity held him frozen. If the Vryn were here, really here, then everything he had studied was about to be tested. The terminal in front of him suddenly switched feeds. Security cameras throughout the station appeared on the screen. Jihoon watched in real time as events unfolded. Safe Zone Alpha showed Mirai and other top combat students gathering with their instructors. They wore light armor and carried weapons. Mirai's face was set in determined focus. Instructor Velthar barked orders, positioning students defensively. Another camera showed the main hangar bay. Commander Thex, a Korthan with 6 arms, directed defense teams. Automated weapons turrets tracked toward the breach point. Soldiers took cover behind barriers. Then Jihoon saw them. The Vryn entered through a hole they had cut in the hangar's outer door. 3 of them. They moved like liquid darkness, their forms hard to focus on through the camera. They were roughly humanoid but wrong in ways Jihoon's eyes struggled to process. Their skin looked like polished obsidian, reflecting no light. They had no visible weapons. They did not need weapons. The defense teams opened fire. Energy blasts filled the hangar in a storm of light and sound. The Vryn moved through it like dancers. They did not dodge so much as exist in the spaces between the shots. Within seconds, they had crossed the hangar and were among the defenders. What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The Vryn moved too fast for the cameras to track clearly. Jihoon saw defenders flying through the air, disarmed and disabled but not killed. The Vryn struck with precision, removing threats without causing unnecessary harm. In less than a minute, the entire defense team lay on the ground, alive but defeated. Commander Thex charged forward, all 6 arms swinging weapons. One Vryn turned its head almost lazily and caught the commander's primary arm. A single twist and Thex was on the ground, conscious but unable to move. The Vryn walked past the groaning defenders without a second glance. They moved deeper into the station. Jihoon switched camera feeds following their progress. Every defense point fell the same way. Soldiers attacked. Vryn disabled them effortlessly. No one died, but no one stood a chance. They reached Safe Zone Alpha. Instructor Velthar stood at the front, his scales bristling with aggression. Mirai and the other top students flanked him, weapons ready. The door exploded inward, not violently but precisely, as if the Vryn had simply deleted it from existence. The 3 Vryn stepped through. "Hold position," Velthar roared. "Fire on my mark." The lead Vryn tilted its head, studying the instructor. Then it moved. Jihoon could barely track the motion on the screen. One moment the Vryn stood at the entrance. The next it was behind Velthar. The instructor collapsed, his weapon clattering to the floor. Mirai attacked. She was fast, trained, perfect in her execution. The Vryn caught her strike with one hand and held her frozen in place. It looked at her the way a scientist might examine an interesting specimen. Then it released her and gently pushed her aside. She stumbled but did not fall. The Vryn had not hurt her. It had simply moved her out of the way. The other students attacked together, coordinated and desperate. The Vryn dismantled their assault in seconds. Bodies hit the floor unconscious or too injured to continue. Still, no one died. When it was over, the 3 Vryn stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the Academy's best fighters. They looked around, almost bored. Then something changed. The lead Vryn's head snapped toward one of the cameras. Jihoon felt his blood freeze. It was staring directly at the lens. Directly at him. It knew he was watching. The Vryn pointed toward the camera, then motioned to its companions. They began moving again, but this time with clear purpose. They were not wandering anymore. They were hunting. Jihoon checked their path on the security system. His stomach dropped. They were heading toward the library, toward the restricted archives. Toward him, he should run. The door was right there. He could make it to a safe zone, hide with the others. But his legs would not move. His mind worked frantically, processing what he had seen. The Vryn had not killed anyone. They were not here to destroy. They were looking for something, someone, and they were coming for him. The archives had only one entrance. Jihoon was trapped. He could hear them now, footsteps in the outer library. Not hurried, not slow, just purposeful and steady. He stood up from the terminal and moved to the center of the room. If this was where he would die, he would face it standing. The door to the restricted section opened. The three Vryn entered, filling the doorway with their dark presence. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Tall, perfect in proportion, with eyes that glowed faintly red in the dim light, the lead Vryn stepped forward. It looked at Jihoon the way it had looked at the others, studying him carefully. But this time it did not look bored. It looked interested. Jihoon's heart hammered in his chest. He was the weakest fighter in the academy. He had no weapons, no armor, no chance of survival if this creature decided to attack. But he remembered what he had observed. The Vryn did not attack first. They waited, so Jihoon waited too. The silence stretched. The Vryn circled him slowly, examining him from every angle. Jihoon forced himself to breathe steadily, to not run, to not break. Finally, the Vryn stopped in front of him. It leaned down, bringing its face level with Jihoon's. Those red eyes stared into him, through him, reading something beyond what he could understand. Then it spoke. The voice was deep and resonant, carrying harmonics that made Jihoon's bones vibrate. The language was nothing he had ever heard, yet somehow, impossibly, he understood it. Kinsman. The word hung in the air between them. The other two Vryn immediately dropped to one knee, their heads bowed. The gesture was unmistakable. Submission. Jihoon's mind reeled. This could not be real. This had to be some kind of trick, some test he did not understand. The apex predators of the galaxy were kneeling to him, to Jihoon, the weakest student in Combat Class 7 Beta. The lead Vryn remained standing, but its posture had changed. Less predator, more equal. We have been searching, it said in that strange, understood language. Watching, waiting, and we have found you. I do not understand, Jihoon managed to say. His voice sounded small and weak in his own ears. You will, the Vryn replied. Come, we have much to discuss, kinsman. Much to teach, and much to learn from you. It extended a hand toward Jihoon, an invitation, a choice. Above them, alarms continued to wail. Somewhere in the station, people were screaming, afraid of the monsters that had invaded their home. But here in this quiet archive, a different kind of first contact was happening. Jihoon looked at the extended hand, at the kneeling Vryn, at the lead creature that had called him kinsman. He thought about 47 losses, about being the weakest, about everyone who had dismissed him, ignored him, told him he would never amount to anything, and he took the Vryn's hand. The Vryn's hand was warm. Jihoon had expected cold, lifeless skin, but it felt alive, almost vibrating with contained energy. The creature pulled him gently to his feet, though Jihoon had not realized he had started to kneel. What do you want from me? Jihoon asked. His voice was steadier now. Want? The lead Vryn tilted its head. We want nothing. We offer everything. You are what we have searched for across thousands of worlds and millions of years. The other two Vryn rose but kept their heads bowed respectfully. Jihoon's mind struggled to process what was happening. Outside these walls, the academy was in chaos. Inside, the galaxy's most feared predators were treating him like something precious. My name is Kale, the lead Vryn said. I am a hunter of the deep path. These are my brothers in the search. We have come to offer you recognition. Recognition of what? Jihoon managed to ask. Of what you are, of what your species can become. Kale moved toward one of the archive terminals. His fingers, which had moved too fast to see during the fight, now operated the keyboard with surprising gentleness. Your people misunderstand us. They see apex predators, destroyers. They are wrong. Images appeared on the screen. Worlds Jihoon did not recognize. Species he had never seen, all accompanied by Vryn observations and notes written in that strange language he somehow understood. We are shepherds, Kale continued. We travel the galaxy testing species, not their strength, not their weapons. We test something deeper, something more important. What? Jihoon stepped closer to the screen, the will to endure. Kale's red eyes fixed on Jihoon. Any species can be strong. Any species can build weapons. But few, very few, can endure true hardship and refuse to break. That is the quality we seek. Jihoon thought about his 47 losses, about training sessions that left him broken and bleeding, about classmates who mocked him and instructors who dismissed him, about getting up every single time even when staying down would have been easier. You have been watching me, he said quietly, for months. Kyle pulled up new files. Jihoon saw himself on the screens. Training footage. Study sessions in the library. even moments alone in his quarters when he thought no one was watching. Every defeat you suffered, every moment you chose to continue instead of quit, every hour spent seeking understanding instead of power. We saw it all. Why me? Mirai is stronger, faster, better at everything. Your friend Mirai is excellent at winning, Kale said, but she has never truly lost. She has never been broken and forced to rebuild herself. She does not know the weight of failure. One of the other Vryn spoke for the first time, his voice deeper than Kale's. The strongest warrior is not the one who never falls. It is the one who falls 1,000 times and stands 1,001. Jihoon felt something crack inside his chest. For months he had believed himself a failure, weak, pathetic. But the Vryn saw something different. They saw strength in his weakness. I still do not understand why you are here, Jihoon said. Why contact the Academy now? Kyle's expression changed, becoming grave. Because time runs short. A great threat approaches from the darkness between galaxies. We call them the Devourers. They consume all life, all matter, all hope. They cannot be defeated by strength alone. They can only be survived by those who refuse to break. And you think humanity can help? We think you can lead. Kale turned from the screen to face Jihoon directly. The galaxy needs warriors who understand that survival is not about never losing. It is about never surrendering. You embody this truth. You are what we have been searching for. Before Jihoon could respond, the archive door burst open. Security officers poured in, weapons raised. Behind them came Instructor Velthar, moving stiffly from his earlier defeat. And behind him Mirai. Step away from the human, Velthar commanded. The two Vryn beside Kale moved instantly, positioning themselves between Jihoon and the security team. Their postures were protective, not aggressive. Stand down, Kyle said calmly. We mean no harm. You attacked our people, Velthar hissed. Breached our station. That is an act of war. We disabled your defenders without killing a single one, Kale replied. If we wanted war, you would already be dead. All of you. The brutal honesty of the statement silenced the room. Everyone knew it was true. Mirai pushed forward. Her eyes were locked on Jihoon, confused and angry. What is happening here? Why are they protecting you? They say I am what they have been searching for, Jihoon said. The words felt strange in his mouth. That makes no sense. You are the weakest in our class. Weak? Kale's attention shifted to Mirai. Tell me, skilled warrior, how many times have you been truly defeated? Mirai's jaw tightened. I do not lose. Exactly. Kale gestured toward Jihoon. This one has lost more times than you have fought. Yet he stands here, still trying, still learning, still growing. You have strength. He has something more valuable. He has endurance. This is insane, Velthar interrupted. You cannot seriously suggest that our weakest student has value to you. We do not suggest. We state fact. Kale pulled something from his armor. It looked like a crystal, but it pulsed with inner light. This is the mark of the Sentinel. It has not been offered to a non-Vryn in 10,000 years. We offer it now to Jihoon of Earth. The room fell silent. Even Velthar seemed stunned. What does that mean? Jihoon asked. It means you would lead a joined force of Vryn and humans. It means you would have authority over warriors who have conquered worlds. It means you would stand as equal to the greatest among us. Kale held out the crystal. It means you would be recognized across the galaxy as something no other species has achieved. This is a trick, Velthar said. Some kind of trap. Why would we need tricks? One of the other Vryn asked. If we wanted to harm you, you could not stop us. Again, the brutal truth silenced objections. Jihoon stared at the crystal. His whole life he had been told he was not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy. And now the most powerful beings in the known galaxy were offering him something beyond imagination. Why do you really want me? He asked Kale. The truth. Kale's eyes seemed to soften slightly. Because you remind us of what we once were. Long ago the Vryn were weak. We were prey, not predators. Other species hunted us nearly to extinction. But we survived. We endured. We learned that true strength comes not from avoiding pain but from surviving it. When we see you, we see ourselves. We see potential that your own kind cannot recognize. And if I refuse, then we continue our search elsewhere. But the Devourers still come. And your galaxy will face them without guidance from those who have survived such threats before. Jihoon looked at Mirai. She stared back. Her expression complicated. Confusion, jealousy, but also something that might have been understanding beginning to dawn. "I trained my entire life to be the best," she said quietly. "How can you be chosen over me?" "Because being the best is not enough," Ji-hoon replied, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. "Kale is right. You have never truly failed. You do not know what it means to keep fighting when everything tells you to quit. I have learned that lesson every single day." He turned back to Kale and the offered crystal. "If I accept, what happens to the academy? To my classmates?" "Nothing. We came only for you. When you are ready, we leave. The academy can report this as a misunderstanding, a test, whatever helps them save face. We care only about preparing for what comes next." Ji-hoon thought about the Devourers, about a threat that could consume galaxies, about the responsibility being offered to him. It terrified him, but fear had never stopped him before. He reached out and took the crystal. The moment his fingers touched it, warmth spread through his body. The crystal began to glow brighter, responding to his touch. Symbols appeared on its surface, writing in that same language he somehow understood. The two Vryn beside Kale immediately dropped to one knee again. This time Kale did the same. "Sentinel," they said in unison. "We acknowledge your authority," Mirai gasped. Velthar looked like he might be sick. The security officers lowered their weapons, confused and afraid. Ji-hoon stood there holding a glowing crystal, with 3 apex predators kneeling before him. The weakest student in Combat Class 7 Beta had just become something unprecedented in galactic history. "What do I do now?" he asked. Kale rose. "Now you learn, you train, you prepare, and you teach your people what we have taught you. The Devourers are coming. The galaxy needs warriors who know how to survive the impossible. You will show them how." Ji-hoon looked down at the crystal in his hand. It felt right somehow, like it had been waiting for him all along. "Okay," he said simply. "Teach me." News spread across the galaxy in hours. The Vryn had made peaceful contact. They had chosen a human, a nobody, a student who could not win a single training match. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Representatives from hundreds of worlds demanded explanations. Some called it a trick. Others called it an insult. A few called it the beginning of something dangerous. Ji-hoon barely noticed. He was too busy trying to survive his first week of Vryn training. "Again," Kale said calmly. Ji-hoon picked himself up from the training mat for the 20th time that hour. His body screamed in protest. Vryn training made Academy combat class look like a gentle dance. They stood in a converted hangar bay the Academy had reluctantly provided. The Vryn had stayed, claiming they needed to prepare Ji-hoon before taking him to meet the greater Vryn fleet. Commander Thex had wanted to refuse, but after what happened during their first encounter, no one dared force the issue. "You move like you expect to win," Kale observed. "That is your first mistake. I should expect to lose?" Ji-hoon gasped, catching his breath. "You should expect nothing. Expectation clouds judgment. You simply respond to what is, not what you hope will be." Kyle moved into a ready stance. Again, and this time remember, pain is information. Failure is education. Death is the only true defeat. They engaged. Kyle moved with that impossible speed, and Ji-hoon tried to react. He failed. He hit the mat again. But this time, something was different. As he fell, Ji-hoon's mind analyzed the movement. The angle of attack. The shift in weight. He had seen this pattern before in one of his study sessions. The Vryn moved efficiently, never wasting energy. "Better," Kyle said. "You are beginning to see." "See what?" "That strength and speed matter less than understanding. You cannot match my physical abilities, but you can predict my movements if you learn to read the patterns." Over the following days, Ji-hoon trained harder than he ever had at the academy. But it was different now. Kale did not criticize his failures. Instead, the Vryn examined each mistake, turning it into a lesson. "Your academy teaches you to avoid failure," Kyle explained during a rest period. "We teach you to use it. Every time you fall, you learn something new. Every defeat reveals a weakness to strengthen. This is the way of endurance." Word of the training session spread through the academy. Students began to watch from the observation areas. They saw Ji-hoon losing over and over, just like always. But they also saw something else. They saw him getting back up faster each time. They saw him learning. Mirai watched more than anyone. One evening, after a particularly brutal session, she approached Ji-hoon in the corridor. He was limping slightly and bruises covered his arms. "Can we talk?" she asked. Jihoon nodded, too tired to do much else. They found a quiet corner in one of the observation decks. Through the windows, stars glittered against the black of space. "I have been thinking about what Kale said," Miri began, "about me never truly losing. Miri, you do not need to. Let me finish." She took a breath. "I have won every match, every competition, every test, and I thought that made me strong. But when the Vryn came, I could not even slow them down. One of them defeated me like I was nothing." She looked at her hands. "I realized I have never learned how to lose, and now I do not know how to deal with it." Jihoon understood that feeling well. "It is hard," he said quietly. "Losing hurts. Every time. But you keep going. Even after 47 defeats, you kept training." "Why?" He considered the question carefully. "Because winning or losing did not matter as much as understanding. I wanted to know why I failed. What I could learn. Each loss was like a puzzle to solve. The Vryn chose you because of that, did they not? Because you understand something I never learned. They chose me because I had no choice but to learn it. You are naturally talented, I am not. We walked different paths." Mirai was quiet for a moment. "Kale offered you authority over a mixed force. Humans and Vryn together. You will need soldiers who can learn this new way of thinking." Jihoon saw where this was going. "Mirai, you do not have to. I want to join." She met his eyes. "I want to learn what you know. I want to understand what the Vryn see in you. And I want to help face these devourers. It will not be easy. Vryn training is different from anything we learned at the academy. I know, but if the weakest student in our class can become a sentinel, then maybe the strongest can learn to become something more than just a winner." Jihoon smiled despite his exhaustion. "Okay, I will ask Kale. Ask me what?" The Vryn's voice came from behind them. Neither had heard him approach. "Mirai wants to join the task force," Jihoon explained. Kale studied her with those unblinking red eyes. "You are skilled. But skill alone does not make you suitable." "I know," Mirai said. "I need to learn what Jihoon knows. How to fail and keep fighting. How to endure. That is not learned through words. It is learned through experience. Then teach me." Kale was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Very well. Report to the training bay at dawn. Be prepared to lose repeatedly." "I will be there," Mirai said. Over the next weeks, others joined. Doyen volunteered, wanting to support his friend. More humans followed, curious about what the Vryn saw in them. Even some non-humans applied, intrigued by this new philosophy of strength through survival. The Galactic Council continued to debate and argue. A representative named Yuna arrived at the academy, sent to investigate the situation. She was human, older and professional with eyes that saw too much. She interviewed Jihoon in a private conference room. "You understand the political situation this creates," she said. "Humanity is already viewed with suspicion by many species. Now the most powerful beings in the galaxy have chosen a human to lead their forces. Some call this proof of human superiority. Others call it a trap. I cannot control what others think," Jihoon replied. "I can only do what I believe is right." "And what do you believe?" "I believe the Devourers are real. I believe they are coming. And I believe the galaxy needs to prepare using every advantage we can find." Yuna leaned back in her chair. "The Council wants guarantees. They want to know the Vryn will not use this as an excuse to dominate other species. The Vryn do not want domination. They want survival. So you trust them completely?" Jihoon thought about that. "I trust what I have seen. They could have killed everyone at this academy. They did not. They could have taken me by force. They offered me a choice. Everything they have done suggests they mean what they say. And if you are wrong, if this is some elaborate deception, then I will fail again. And I will learn from that failure. Just like I have learned from every other failure in my life." Yuna studied him carefully. "You really believe that, do not you? That failure teaches more than success." "I have had more teachers than anyone," Jihoon said with a slight smile. Eventually, Yuna returned to the council with her report. Jihoon never learned exactly what she said, but the council agreed to allow the task force to form. Officially, it was called an Experimental Joint Defense Initiative. Unofficially, everyone knew it was a preparation for war. 12 Vryn warriors arrived to serve under Jihoon. Each was a veteran of countless battles. Each had lived for centuries. and each knelt before a human who had lost more fights than he had won. Training intensified. Kale pushed the human recruits harder, breaking them down and rebuilding them with Vryn philosophy. Mirai struggled more than anyone. She was used to success, and repeated failure frustrated her deeply. One day, after a particularly difficult session, she threw her training weapon across the room in anger. "I cannot do this," she shouted. "I am supposed to be the best, but I cannot beat even the weakest Vryn in training." Kale picked up her weapon and handed it back. "Why does that anger you?" "Because I should be better than this." "Should." There is that word again. Expectation. You expect yourself to be perfect. When you fall short, you blame yourself for failing. But failure is not a flaw. It is a tool. I do not want to fail. Then you will never truly succeed. Kale's voice was firm but not unkind. Every Vryn in this room has failed thousands of times. We have lost battles. We have made mistakes that cost lives. But we learned from each failure. We became stronger not by avoiding pain but by surviving it. Mirai's anger drained away, replaced by something like despair. "I do not know how to do that." Jihoon stepped forward. "Yes, you do. You are doing it right now. You failed. You got angry. But you are still here. You did not quit. That is the first step." She looked at him, then at Kale, then back at her weapon. Slowly, she picked it up again. "Okay," she said quietly. "Again." Kale's expression might have been approval. "Again," he agreed. As the training continued, news reached them from the outer rim. Long-range sensors had detected anomalies in deep space. Entire star systems were going dark, their signals simply ending. The readings matched what the Vryn had described. The Devourers were not coming. They were already here. The reports came in waves, each worse than the last. 3 planetary defense fleets had engaged the Devourer vanguard. Within hours, all 3 were gone. No survivors, no distress calls, just silence. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions, but talk accomplished nothing. Traditional tactics failed against an enemy that simply consumed everything in its path. Fear spread across known space like a disease. Jihoon stood in the command center watching tactical displays. The Devourer fleet moved through space like a living thing, flowing around obstacles and absorbing everything it touched. Ships, stations, entire moons, all vanished into the dark mass. "They do not fight," Kale observed beside him. "They consume. It is their nature. How do we stop them?" "You do not stop them. You survive them. You endure." Mirai entered the command center with Doyen and several other human recruits. Weeks of Vryn training had changed them. They moved differently now, with purpose but without arrogance. They had learned to fail. Now they needed to learn to succeed. "The Council has authorized our deployment," Mirai reported. "We are the only force with any chance against the vanguard." "One small ship against a fleet," Doyen said. "Those are terrible odds." "We do not need good odds," Jihoon replied. "We just need to survive long enough to learn their weaknesses." A hologram appeared in the center of the room. Admiral Soo-hyun, commander of the human fleet, looked tired but determined. "Sentinel Jihoon, we are transmitting all tactical data to your ship. The vanguard is approaching the Deneb system. If it falls, the route to core worlds lies open." "Understood, Admiral. We will engage within the hour." "Jihoon." Soo-hyun's voice softened slightly. "You are carrying more than just your crew. You carry humanity's reputation. Do not let us down." The hologram faded. Jihoon felt the weight of those words. Not just humanity. Every species in the galaxy was watching. If he failed here, hope would die with him. "Shall we?" Kyle gestured toward the door. The ship they had been given was small compared to military vessels. Fast and maneuverable, designed by a human engineer named Minho who had studied Vryn technology. It carried a crew of 30. 12 Vryn warriors, 15 humans, and 3 volunteers from other species who wanted to learn. Jihoon took the command seat. It still felt strange giving orders to beings who had lived centuries longer than him. But the Vryn obeyed without question. They had recognized him as Sentinel, and their word was absolute. "Course set for Deneb system," the pilot Taejin reported. "Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Use that time to rest," Jihoon ordered. "All crew members sleep in shifts. When we arrive, there will be no rest." As the ship moved through hyperspace, Jihoon reviewed everything they knew about the Devourers. It was not much. They absorbed matter and energy. They moved as a collective. They showed no interest in communication. But there had to be a weakness. Everything had a weakness. Mireille found him in his quarters, studying tactical data for the 100th time. "You should rest too," she said. "I will. Soon." She sat down across from him. "Are you scared?" Jihoon considered lying, then decided against it. "Terrified, me too," she smiled slightly. "Strange. I used to think fear meant weakness. Now I think it might mean wisdom. The Vryn say fear is useful if you do not let it control you. It keeps you alert. They have a saying for everything, do not they? Centuries of experience will do that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mireille spoke again. "Thank you. For what?" "For showing me there was more to learn. I thought I knew everything about being strong. I was wrong. You were not wrong. You just had not finished learning yet. None of us have." When they arrived at Deneb system, the sight that greeted them stopped conversation. The Devourer Vanguard was massive. It looked like a living shadow, consuming the outer planets one by one. Defense satellites fired uselessly into its mass. Ships that got too close simply vanished. "That is impossible to fight," someone whispered. "Then we will not fight it," Jihoon said. "Taejin, bring us closer, but stay beyond its reach." "I want to observe." For hours they watched. The Devourer moved with purpose, flowing around obstacles, absorbing resources. But Jihoon noticed something. When it consumed matter, there was a brief moment where the mass darkened slightly. A flicker, almost like it was processing. "There," he pointed. "Did you see that?" Kyle leaned forward. "Interesting. It pauses to digest. Very brief but consistent. What if that is when it is vulnerable? Vulnerable to what? Our weapons cannot penetrate its mass." Jihoon thought back to all his studies, to every report he had read. The answer came not from military tactics but from biology. It is like a living organism. When you eat, your body diverts energy to digestion. You become slower, less aware. "You want to attack while it feeds?" Mireille asked. "No, I want to go inside while it feeds." The room fell silent. "That is insanity," one of the human soldiers said. "Yes," Jihoon agreed, "but it is also the only chance we have. We cannot destroy it from outside. So we go inside. We find its core, whatever passes for its brain or heart, and we disrupt it." Kyle's red eyes gleamed. "Strength through survival. You would turn our greatest weakness into our advantage. The Devourers expect us to fight conventionally. They expect us to fail, so we do the unexpected. We need volunteers," Jihoon said. "This might be a one-way mission. I cannot order anyone to go." Every hand in the room rose. Humans and Vryn alike, without hesitation. Jihoon felt something swell in his chest. Pride, hope, fear, all mixed together. "Minho, we need environmental suits that can survive inside the Devourer mass." "How long?" The engineer's hologram appeared. "Already working on it. Give me 2 hours." While Minho worked, Jihoon planned the mission with Kale and the team leaders. They would use a small boarding craft to penetrate the Devourer during a feeding phase. Once inside, they would have minutes at most to locate and disrupt the core. It was a terrible plan with almost no chance of success. It was perfect. 2 hours later, a dozen volunteers stood ready in modified environmental suits. Jihoon led them to the boarding craft, a small ship designed to punch through heavy armor. "Remember," Kale said, "do not fight what you cannot defeat. Survive. Adapt. Endure." "We will see you when we return," Jihoon said. "No." Kyle shook his head. "You will see us inside. I am coming with you, Kale. You are too valuable, as are you. Yet you go anyway. I am Vryn. We do not send others to face dangers we will not face ourselves." There was no arguing with that logic. The boarding craft launched just as the Devourer began consuming a small moon. Jihoon watched through the view screen as they approached the massive shadow. Up close, it looked even more terrifying, like staring into death itself. "Brace for impact," Taejin warned. They hit the outer membrane of the Devourer mass. Reality twisted. Light bent in wrong directions. Sound became color and color became pressure. Jihoon's mind struggled to process what his senses reported. Then they were through. Inside the Devourer. It looked like the inside of a living creature, if that creature had been turned inside out and stretched across miles. Organic structures pulsed with dark energy. Streams of dissolved matter flowed through channels like blood through veins. "Sensors are useless here," Taejin reported. "We are navigating blind." "Then we move by instinct," Kale said. "Follow the energy flow. All organisms pull resources toward their core. They abandoned the craft and moved on foot, using magnetic boots to walk along the organic structures. The environment tried to dissolve them, but Minho's suits held. Barely. Time became meaningless. They walked for what felt like hours but might have been minutes. Ahead, a glow appeared, pulsing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. There, Jihoon pointed. The core was beautiful in a terrible way, a sphere of condensed energy, surrounded by veins of captured matter. It processed everything the devourer consumed, turning raw material into more of itself. How do we disrupt it? Mirai asked. Jihoon remembered what Kale had taught him. Failure is education. Pain is information. He looked at the energy flow and saw the pattern. We do not destroy it. We redirect it, make it consume itself. Using tools and weapons, they carved channels in the organic structure, redirecting the flow of energy back toward the core. The devourer began to convulse. It realized something was wrong but could not stop the process. The core pulsed faster, brighter. The energy built to critical levels. Run! Kale shouted. They ran. The structure collapsed behind them. Energy exploded outward. Jihoon felt heat on his back, felt the suit beginning to fail. Then hands grabbed him, Vryn and human alike, pulling each other toward the exit point. No one left behind. No one forgotten. They burst out of the devourer mass just as it imploded. The entire vanguard collapsed into itself, the uncontrolled energy tearing it apart from within. Their ship retrieved them as debris rained past. Jihoon pulled off his helmet and took a deep breath of clean air. Around him, every member of the team was alive. Injured, exhausted, but alive. Report from the fleet, Tejan called out. The vanguard is destroyed. Deneb's system is secure. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Humans and Vryn embraced, celebrating survival. But Kyle stood beside Jihoon, his expression grave. This was one vanguard. The main devourer fleet still comes. I know, Jihoon said, but now we know they can be beaten. Now we know how to survive them, and that knowledge will spread. Admiral Suhyun's hologram appeared, tears in her eyes. You did it. You,